who's our main character in chapter 1, sees a woman leaving a bookstore and while she's on a run, so she doesn't talk to her, but she keeps kind of looking for her. And so this is a little bit later after she spent a couple times going back to the bookstore, hoping to just accidentally run into her. And so this will get us right into our meeting. So there we go. The following Saturday afternoon, Mags brought Ender's Game to the bookstore, deciding to make coffee and reading her new Saturday routine. Mags nodded to the barista before scanning the room. Her eyes landed on a woman reading alone at a table, a blonde woman with a familiar profile. Normally unflappable, Mags's heart rate increased enough for her to notice. What was it about this woman? She didn't even have that intriguing expression on her face now. Disclaimer that she was looking at a book in an intriguing way. Also, I forgot to mention, Mags is an active duty Marine during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. All right. So time for some recon. Mags made her way to the barista, ordered a drip coffee, added cream and sugar, and found a spot along the wall where she could read and observe without looking creepy. Already, Mags noticed differences. Gone was the tight bun, replaced with a messier one, but not one that said she'd just rolled out of bed. No makeup, not that it was required. Her dark blue short-sleeved blouse paired with her lighter jeans in a style that was feminine but casual. Definitely not a style Mags had cared to master, yet visually appreciated. Especially the way this blouse in particular hinted at the curves underneath. The mystery woman put effort into her appearance, even on a day off, but not in a way that screamed high maintenance. Whether she'd been looking for attention or not, she'd grabbed Mags. For a second time. The woman glanced up, brows furrowed as she peered around the room. Mags dropped her eyes before she was caught, opening her book to a random page. At least her book was upright. Way to play it cool, Marine. Once the blonde's attention returned to her book, Mags found her correct page and took a sip of her coffee. She peeked occasionally, not lingering until the woman's brows relaxed as she read. Mags looked more closely this time and saw not only the textbook laid open, but a paperback open on top of it. Odd. Was she multitasking or reading something she'd prefer to hide? Whatever the intention, Mags had her opener. What she didn't have was the timing. If she knew one thing about readers, it was never to interrupt them. She focused on her own book, glancing up intermittently in hopes an opening would present itself. After a few pages, she raised her gaze again, but before she could look away, the woman whipped her head around and looked over her reading glasses right at Mags. Whoops, not so subtle after all. She didn't look upset, just puzzled, so Mags raised her mug without breaking eye contact and offered a playful smirk. The way the woman looked her over placed her solidly on the sapphic end of the Kinsey scale. With that crucial question answered, Mags allowed her smirk to become a confident smile that she hoped hid the excitement stirring in her belly. When the blonde finally looked away, Mags knew she wouldn't have to wait much longer to approach her. Mags downed the last of her coffee and watched the woman from behind her book again. With a few deep breaths, Mags managed to calm her body's reactions. When the woman looked up again, Mags simply winked. She didn't miss the woman's breathing becoming shallow and fast as color rose to her cheeks. Maybe the odds of finding someone in the bookstore weren't so small after all. The question, however, remained. Could she be discreet? No woman, no matter how attractive, was worth her career. If they were in a bar, Mags would offer to buy her a drink and look for any red flags as they talked. They were in a coffee shop, so not all that different. Just as Mags set her book down, the blonde stood and knocked hard against the table, sending her book skidding towards Mags. The woman scrambled for the textbook while Mags picked up the paperback. She stood and was finally able to peek at the cover, Safe Harbor by Radcliffe. Mags flipped it over, but only had time to register the words gay teenager and Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Marine Corps Reserve, before her attention was drawn back to the event playing out before her. The blonde grasped the larger book and stood fast, slightly off balance, which placed her within Mag's personal space. Her eyes took significantly longer to work their way up Mag's stomach, up to her chest, all of which she knew was on display thanks to her tight white tank top. When the woman's eyes finally met hers, Mags let her amusement show. Hey, Mags said. Hi there, the woman said with an unexpected accent. She looked away, biting her bottom lip in a way that Mags found adorable. Recognizing her discomfort, Mags took half a step back. With the book clenched in her hands, Mags could finally see the textbook that remained under the paperback all morning. When she checked the back of the paperback in her hands, then she checked the back of the paperbook in her hands, skimming the full blurb to confirm it was very gay. Are you actually into, Mags gestured to the textbook, mathematical methods for physics and engineers, or is that to distract onlookers from your romance novel? Mags handed her the paperback with a hint of a smile on her lips. The woman placed it on top of her textbook and placed both to her chest, almost crushing the reading glasses she must have hung off the top of her blouse while Mags was strategizing. As a matter of fact, not only am I into it, as you so imprecisely put it, I teach the subject. Mags ignored her defensiveness. Seriously? That's intriguing. You think so? The woman's question was laced with sarcasm. I do. Beautiful women are a dime a dozen in California, but beautiful and smart? You've got my attention. The woman's cheeks turned a deeper red. So why hide the romance novel? Afraid people won't take you seriously? Or are you in the closet? Megs watched her steadily, awaiting an answer to her purposely forward question, designed to root out at least one red flag early. After a beat, the woman replied, well, I guess I could tell you, but then, a non-answer. Not as easy to read as Meg's first thought. You'd have to kill me, huh? That is correct. The woman smiled and relaxed her shoulders. Meg studied her. I doubt a math teacher has the skills to take me out. Are you a spy? With that accent, you'd have to be MI6, right? When the woman looked away, slouching, Meg's worried she'd made a mistake. Or I could be completely wrong. Where are you from? No, you're not wrong. I'm from London, Notting Hill to be exact. The woman remained unexpectedly cautious. Ooh, like the movie? I'd love to go there, though I doubt I'd be as lucky as Hugh Grant and run into a beautiful actress in a bookstore. Well, I lived there nearly all my life, and it never happened to me. I mean, I never met anyone in a bookstore that I was interested in. Until now? Megs held the woman's gaze, charging the air between them. The woman didn't need to respond. Her answer was written in her dark blue eyes. She did, however, need a name. I'm Megs, by the way. Oh, right, Elaine. And I'm actually going to stop there because it will go on for a while, and we have time limits. So.
Excellent. Well, that sounds really interesting. So, Elle, are you around?
You can keep your camera off if you want to be shy.
Yeah, you can keep your camera off.
But if you want to unmute. Yay!
I was on mute.
So I have a question for Jax. Do you find it easier writing about somebody in the armed forces than you do somebody who isn't in the armed forces?
Not necessarily. It's more that I need to write about this time period because there were tens of thousands of us that experienced it. However, that's actually really small when you look at the overall number of people who serve, especially across generations. It's a policy that only existed for 20-ish years. But I've been out for 20, what year are we in? Yeah, 20 years. And the impact still remains. Like there's so much trauma from living through that time period, even if nothing major happened to you, that I feel it's incredibly important to share these stories, to educate people on the harm, because it's a policy that sounds okay, because it was a compromise. It's like, oh, well, if no one asks you and as long as you don't talk about it, it should be fine. And that's not the reality. So to me, it was just, I needed to start sharing these stories. It was never planned to be an additional 4 stories. They just kind of unfolded as I wrote each book. Because there's another one coming, probably not for 2 years yet, but so yeah, I mean, there are parts that are easy. At the same time, I still have to do a ridiculous amount of research, and it's 20-year-old knowledge. So yeah, there's a lot of research needed, and it's not the most fun to dive into that. All my feelings around that time period is just, yeah, not the most enjoyable, but necessary.
Yeah, it does sound, I mean, it's a weird one. Obviously, I'm from Britain. I've heard of the don't ask, don't tell thing. I didn't realize it was such a short period of time, though. I thought it was kind of quite a big, long-term thing, but it's surprising to hear that it was only for a year or so.
So it was, yeah, I mean, so to clarify, before Don't Ask, Don't Tell, they would do things like witch hunts. So yeah. That would grab straight women too. It would grab people who just didn't play the game. But so Don't Ask, Don't Tell was brought in 93. And so that stopped. They weren't supposed to be able to do like witch hunts and things. You had to have really good reason. And then it went away. The bill was passed in 2010 and it was officially gone in 2011.
Okay.
So, but we still have the trans ban. So I constantly remind people that we still have these problems.
Definitely. Emma Nichols has popped up on my live Twitter. For a start, she says, "Love the reading in your accent." So that worked for her. She's asking, what was it like to co-write? I guess this could be a question to both you and Elle. And how did you work the process?
We made it up as we went along. We really did. And honestly, we didn't even think to do like a Zoom chat until like we were in final edit. Like that's how we faked it every step of the way.
By the time we found Zoom.
Yeah. So it was but we're in a Slack group together with Lesfic readers and writers. And if anyone wants that info, I can pass it along later. So like every day, since we're hours apart, if you can tell from the accents, and our timing worked out really well. So we would do like a handoff basically when each of us was going to bed or wait, so that then the next person would be working usually when the other was sleeping, but then we'd also chat in the middle. So we just brainstormed a lot. Elle did a lot of the initial writing just because she had more time available. And then I'd go in and fix things and vice versa. There'd be times when I'd be like, I really need to keep doing this chunk. And then it'd be like, go in and make Lane lean. And then like I would have to go in and make Mags more Mags, or we'd have to just talk about different aspects that one of us wasn't familiar with. And it was just a lot of we talked constantly and we reviewed stuff constantly. And in the end, we just made sure that everyone understood what was happening because we're both pantsers. So it really was just go right as we went and see what happens and then clean it all up. And go ahead, Elle.
That's exactly it. We didn't have any sort of story arc or anything, did we, at the beginning? We just kind of knew that we wanted to have a British math professor and a military marine, and that were it.
Yeah, and can you talk a little bit louder because it's a little quiet?
I don't know where my mic. I told you I've swapped laptops. I don't even know where the microphone is on this thing.
Oh, that's better.
It's just gone. That's nice and loud.
I don't know where the hell it is, but never mind. I'll just shout.
Okay.
Is that
You're
better?
good. Oh, now the dogs are there. But yeah, I mean, there were definitely like because Lane is a British expat, and that you can't tell a ton yet from this. There are just even word choices, right? And we play on the word choices in the story because it's fun, right? The difference between American and British English can be just amusing. So we played it up, and there were a lot of times that I would just write it and go, I don't know, is this right? What's the word for this over there? And even like mom versus mom and stuff right? Like in how people talk, we were making sure that everything was authentic. And then even so in Mag's chapters, I use American spelling. And in Lane's chapters, we use British spelling. So that as a person's reading, you get more of that engrossing aspect to really feel like you're in that moment with each character. So there was a lot of thought to it, but it really was making it up on the fly.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like a really good story. And it sounds like you guys worked really well together, despite the fact that you didn't really have a plan. Yeah, it sounds great.
We didn't argue at all, did we?
No. We just needed to clarify things.
No really bad problems at all. We just kind of gelled, didn't we?
Yep. Even though our writing it can be very different, but it was different in a complimentary way.
But nobody knows who wrote who. And everything you wrote, Mags, and I wrote Lane. But I wrote, there's like chunks of Mags that I wrote, and there's chunks of Lane that you wrote. So it wasn't a case of I did one character, you did the other. We actually mixed it up a bit, didn't we? And nobody can actually tell, apart from us, if our memories
not
work,
always us.
Nobody can actually tell who wrote what. So sometimes we can't tell who wrote what anymore, can we? Unless we've forgotten who's written what.
Exactly.
Excellent. I suppose that's the way to do it, isn't it? Especially if you both kind of had input on both kind of bits of the story, then yeah, that totally makes sense. Awesome.
Yeah.
I haven't got any more questions from the Facebook feed, but Catherine, Anne, have you guys got any questions for these guys?
I have a couple questions. Jax, what kind of Marine and what kind of background in the Marines do you have?
Yeah, so I went in 1998. That timing and a lot of that, some of that experience is very much paralleled in my second book, Marine Awakening. I specifically put it in that time period because I knew the things that happened in that time, right? Like what music was out, stuff like that. But then I ended up getting discharged in April of 2000. And a lot of that's actually going to be in book 5 of this series, which will wrap it up. My direct experiences in an extremely homophobic command where they were just it really was just one person really gunning for me. And I'm actually exploring a lot of that in a narrative writing class that I'm taking right now for veterans. And I'll share that information when it's done and I'm allowed to. But I'm writing a piece that kind of goes into that too. So I had 2 years and I'm still around a lot of Marines too. So I talked to people and would just ask questions and read things and just try to get as much of an understanding over that as I could. And so, yeah, it was short, but it's never going to cease to have an impact in my life for sure.
Of course, and it sounds like your writing is very cathartic, which is, yeah, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so the other question I have is mathematics, right? I'm really interested in mathematics, although I don't understand any of it. How much does it play in, how much does mathematics play in your book? I mean, obviously she's math. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So we didn't go into the math a lot, partly because it wasn't a part of the couple part, right? However, that's the tie-in between the Marine Discovery. So they actually overlap in time. And so that was part of the fun too, was making sure everything lined up between the 2 books. But she's my other character, Cam's calculus teacher, when she leaves the Marines and goes to college. And so one of the really funny parts is when like Cam is just going to class and like she's got this math professor who has an accent and it amuses her. And then her long-term girlfriend is still in the Marines, and then so she deploys at the same time that Mags deploys because they're all were in the same unit. And then Cam is having a really bad week because everyone's deployed, like all of her friends are gone, and they're all in mortal danger. And she's having her birthday alone, Marine Corps birthday alone, an anniversary alone. And she goes and just asks for some help on her quiz because she did poorly, which is uncharacteristic. And they realize that they both know Mags. And so like, it's this big thing, partly because one, now she knows that this person who was her drill instructor years ago is gay. And she's dating her math teacher. And so they get to be a support structure for each other while everyone else is deployed. So you have the stuff that happens in Iraq, and then you've got the stuff that happens with Lane and Cam back in San Diego. And so it's talked about a little more, just like referenced calculus and classes and stuff, but I never go into those details because I could have, but I don't think it would have been super interesting. So, I have a master's in physics, but it's been a long time since I've taken calculus and thought about this stuff. So I just thought it would be fun to have her be.
And I know she's all about maths and I was writing Lane.
Yeah. And you don't know advanced math either. So yeah.
I know nothing. I'm a calculator.
Yeah, and most people, that's how they hate math these days. So.
My calculator tells me everything I need to know.
Yep.
Cool. So, well, yeah, the whole series, I haven't read any of them, but they sound awesome. And collaborating, I've watched a panel with, I'm trying to think who it was. I can't remember.
Was that one with was it Claire Lydon and T.B. Markinson and Harper Bliss, maybe? I don't remember who's on it.
Oh, who wrote Meet Me at 10?
I don't remember. I didn't read it yet, so yeah, I don't remember.
Okay. It's a good book, really, really good book. And that was written, basically they wrote a chapter each,
right,
like one after the other, and they've got a sequel and a prequel, I think, as well. But yeah, I remember either listening to them talk or maybe reading an interview or something with the both of them. And yeah, it was kind of they'd sort of, I think they plotted quite extensively and then literally just wrote a chapter each and just kind of kept sending it to each other and stuff. So yeah,
I
it's
mean,
the different ways people collaborate.
that's normal. It
What
just
is
doesn't
normal?
work. I mean, so that's normally how people do it. That's how we tried to do it. It just didn't work for us because of just the different availability of time. And it ended up not being necessary at that point. But I'm not a full-time writer either. So it's like, don't have time to put that time in. And usually the people that do those collaborations are also full-time writers.
Yeah.
So.
And they're not a rookie writer like I was as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this was your first full
My
published
first novel.
book. So. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's all really interesting stuff. I think we'll move on to Catherine and Anne. So, Catherine, if you'd like to introduce Anne and explain what she's doing here.
Okay, I definitely will. My name is Catherine Lane, and Anne is going to be reading from my long short story called Small Bites with Scarlet. She's going to start in episode 2, and just sort of giving a background for that. The POV character is named Christina, and she's been through a terrible breakup. And she's sort of trying to get her confidence back to get back into the dating world. And so hopefully it will play as Anne reads it. And the reason why Anne is reading it is because I am terribly dyslexic, and we would be here till next week if I were going to read it out loud to you. Yes, and she will make it sound much better than I could ever make it sound. So no pressure, Anne. And without any further ado, I'll let her get onto it. Thank you, Anne. I really appreciate your being here for me.
My pleasure. Standing outside of Scarlett's adorable California bungalow 2 weeks later, my stomach churned as if it was in a high-end blender. I had never been so nervous about having dinner, ever. The text that had flown between us since lunch at Happy Noodle had been very clear about what would really be served up tonight. The first one had come only days after our lunch. Come to dinner Saturday night at my house. I'll cook. Love to. What can I bring? Just yourself. I have to bring something. You are bringing something. What? You. Your dessert. Sitting behind my desk, safe and alone, I had giggled with delight when that text had pinged my phone. I had never met anyone so sure of themselves and what they wanted. And unbelievably, what she wanted was me. The texts were cheesy for sure, but I like cheese. And Scarlett, she was intoxicating, beyond sexy, and God help me, almost magical, since she made me feel brand new and alive again. Somehow, I was now the kind of person who dashed across town for a no-strings-attached sexcapade. It's a date, I had texted back. As an appetizer before the dinner date, I had binge-watched her show on my new Food and Flavor Network app. She had been sexy there too, playing to the camera like a lover. But it was more than that. She talked about food with a sensuality that was palpable, even on my tiny phone screen. Now, a week later, I was only a knock away from a starring role in my own episode of Small Bites with Scarlet. I took a deep breath and willed my stomach to be quiet. Still nervous, but more excited than anything, I marveled this night could be the beginning of a new, more adventurous me, at least someone who could leave Andy behind once and for all. I rapped on the oak door with my knuckles. Come in, Scarlett called from inside. Clicking down on the lever, the front door swung open to reveal a great room with a prominent hearth and lots of built-ins. Wooden trim, lovely wainscoting, and craftsman-style accessories gave the house a hip designer look. Hi, Scarlett waved to me from the kitchen, which was just beyond. Scarlett waved to me from the kitchen, which was just beyond the great room. Framed by 2 tapered columns, she gave the impression, even at home, she was on a stage. It suited her. I waved back and met her smile with one of my own. I'm so glad you came. Her voice was happy and excited. Me too, I said, and much to my surprise, I actually meant it. This felt right. My nerves, like the tide at the beach, receded. This is for you. I had to bring something. I slid my standard hostess gift, a medium-sized houseplant with a braided trunk and bright green leaves, onto the counter. It's a money plant. It's supposed to bring good luck and money to the receiver. Oh, cute. It's not often that a CPA brings cash to the table. My heart fluttered. Exactly. Usually I had to explain the joke, but not to her. I didn't think it possible, but she was even sexier now. I'll try not to kill it. No green thumbs here. She held up her thumbs as if to prove it. Then she pointed to a bar stool at the island in front of her. Do you want to sit down or help? Oh, I'll help. Cooking lessons had always been on my bucket list. Great. Her eyes sparkled as she made room for me on her side of the island. You like seafood, I hope? I do. Although I didn't love poke or anything else that was raw. But she was standing in front of a cast iron skillet on a burner, so I hoped I was safe. Good. We're having oyster po' boy sandwiches with barbecue shrimp remoulade and homemade coleslaw. Oh, wow. Yum. I dropped my wallet and keys onto the counter and pushed up my sleeves. Okay, you're going to have to give me explicit instructions if you want it to turn out right. Oh, I think it's going to turn out great, but let's have dinner first. She laughed, clearly misunderstanding me on purpose. On second thought, I like the instructions game. Come over here. Doing what I was told, I rounded the counter and stopped about a foot away. I like the instruction game too. Who didn't when you were being handled by a very sexy woman? She pulled a folded apron out of a nearby drawer and unfurled it with a snap. Stepping closer, she draped it over my head and smoothed it down my body. Her touch was electric. Her hands ran lightly down my side, giving my breasts a wide swath, which of course only made them ache for contact. I wasn't one to rush things, but I really hoped we might be starting with dessert. She slid the apron's ties around my back and leaned in to tie them. Her warm breath caressed my neck, and her hands fluttered at my back, touching but not touching me. Never had putting on more clothes been so sensuous. It was all I could do not to melt, right there at her feet. Okay, she said a little breathlessly and pulled away. I was about to put the shrimp on. She twisted the knob on the stove and the gas ignited with a whoosh under the pan, as if it wasn't hot enough in the kitchen already. She handed me a plate of seasoned shrimp from the other side of the counter. Here, just drop them in when the oil begins to sizzle. I washed my hands and again did as I was told. The shrimp, at first pale against the black pan, began to turn a deeper red as it bubbled in the oil. Let them sear for a minute more, and then flip them. Her voice was all business, giving directions now as if we were on her show. But when she handed me a fork, our fingers brushed. We both froze at the contact. She chuckled, probably because we were acting like schoolgirls, and threw me a look that said she liked this game too. If you want to find out what happens next, you can get the whole story for free by signing up for Catherine's newsletter. Stop by her Facebook page for the link. And that's Catherine Lane with a C. If you want to hear me read how Christina and Scarlett met, Catherine will also put that link up on her Facebook page. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much, Anne. I'll be honest, when I saw the title to, is it Bites with Scarlett?
Small Bites.
Small Bites. I thought it was going to be a vampire, like a vampire.
What?
Sounds like it could be, but that also makes sense with the food. That makes sense too. So do you put food in your books a lot?
I really love to cook. I would say that I'm like, a home chef. I mean, nothing special, but I really like to experiment in the kitchen. And yeah, I think certainly the main character here, she has her own show on this made up food network that I made up, and which is called Small Bites with Scarlett, which of course is a double entendre between, what she's biting. And yes, and so in Heartwood, there is a chef, and the book that I'm currently writing right now also has a chef. So, yeah. I mean, when I'm not writing, I
read Heartwood a long time ago, and I liked it. So,
Yes, and so when I'm not writing, I'm definitely watching HGTV and all the, not only the cooking shows, but like the cooking competitions, which I really love.
Cool, awesome. What's your favorite thing to cook?
Oh gosh. Well, I really love artichokes. So we have, my wife actually just the other day put a whole bunch of artichoke plants into our garden. So hopefully that, next year we'll be having them for fresh. But I really like sauces. So any kind of sauce that you could put on something, which is really good, like hollandaise on artichokes, or, like a chimichurri on a steak. So it's the accompaniments that I really like. So yes.
Cool. So you've got dyslexia. I was interested because I've done quite a bit of research into it, because my second book has a character with dyslexia in it, and I've talked to a couple of people as well. I was just wondering how that affects your writing process.
Well, I was thinking about that question, and I guess my kind of lame answer is I don't know, because I've never written without it. But I will say that it definitely affects my editor quite a bit. I think that they have to do double duty with me, which if any editor is listening, I completely apologize for. But, I certainly have gotten really, really good proofreaders. Anne has helped me a lot on that, and she's invaluable. Also, I think the what is it, the text to speech function on your computers also can help. So I've now, put days of just sitting in a chair listening to my book back. So that also helps. Yeah, I mean, I think I really like rhythm, which is odd because I have literally no rhythm. I can't dance, I can't play an instrument. I think that is definitely part of the dyslexia. But when I'm writing, it kind of feels like I can find that rhythm that I can't find anywhere else in sometimes in my daily life. So I think that's one of the reasons I enjoy writing so much, that it's, the rhythm is playing in my head, and it's a little bit different than a lot of people's, but yeah, I think I've very long-windedly answered your question. So
no, that's perfect. Jax, have you got any questions for Catherine?
Yeah, I actually just recently, what is time in 2020? Sometime in the past couple months, I got the chance to read Romancing the Kicker, and I genuinely didn't know what to expect. So it was interesting to me how many emotions I felt reading that book. Well, listening, because I prefer audiobooks usually. But what I really liked was that we really got, there was so much that I think people can relate to in dealing with misogyny and sexism and all that garbage, right? But then giving us hope at the end that there was a way through all that to kind of beat them at their game. So one, I appreciate that book. It was lovely. So thank you very much. And then I guess, basic question of just kind of, where did that book kind of come from, and how did you kind of flesh that out?
Well, I was a college athlete, so I love sports. I love sports in any form, and I really love writing about them. And my first book was about soccer, which is actually the sport that I played and where I met my wife. So I'm trying, and then I thought, well, everybody's writing a soccer book, everybody's writing a golf book. I need to find something else that people aren't really writing about. And of course, I think about that same time, there was all these press releases of girls trying out for football teams, right? And of course, the Professional Women's Football League as well, right? So I thought maybe I can do that, or maybe I could just take my soccer, my soccer star and put her onto a football team. And when I raised that with my father, this is kind of a long-winded answer. He was like, that would never happen. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe it would happen as maybe it would happen as just PR, right? Maybe they don't really mean it to work, but they just want to get some good PR out of it. And that's where kind of the book came from. But once I was in it, I'm like, you know what? He's wrong. This could totally happen. Yeah. So, I mean, and I think that maybe someday we might see a female kicker, on a professional team. I mean, didn't Julie Foudy go out and, try to kick for the, I can't remember which team it was, but yeah, she did some kicking. So.
Yeah. And I thought the setup was super believable. the way you set it up. Having a team that was just, they had nothing left. Like, so why not do this, you know, do something big and maybe we have a chance to turn something around. So yeah, I really liked it. I also love sports stories, so I'll always pick them up too. So yeah, now I'll have to make sure. I don't think I'm subscribed to your newsletter, so now I need to make sure I do that. And so I can read this little thing that you got going. So
well, thank you very much. I hope you like it. I mean, with this little thing, I think I was, you know, the sports books are all about doing, and I'm definitely a doer. My wife isn't even, she's a great athlete, so she's all about doing as well. And I was trying to sort of retreat into one POV and really figure out how the character would like arc from, well, I don't want to ruin it, arc from like, there's no way that I could possibly date anybody to, and then you'll have to jump onto the newsletter, which I've actually just put up, Jen, on the Facebook feed, so I hope that's okay. All right.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Absolutely. Yes, subscribe to Catherine Name's newsletter, guys, because that's the way to get stuff. And hear about it.
And the story's pretty long. I think it's like 13,000 words. So
nice.
Not a book, but, you know, certainly something, you know, hopefully to pass away in afternoon.
Yeah, and I'll throw mine in the Facebook thing later because I have a couple bonus scenes that I've written. They're all relatively short, but they are all very steamy. So when people want that stuff, you know, it's there. And there's actually a bonus scene from the book I was just reading. So
oh, free stuff, guys, free stuff. Everybody sign up to everything they can get their hands on and we'll get all the free stuff. All of the free stuff. Awesome. Anne, have you got any questions for Catherine?
Oh no, I asked all those questions over the last several years, I think. I will say, Jax, you really like audiobooks, and the first episode of Small Bites with Scarlett is in audio. So
yeah, sweet. It makes it a lot easier. And I recently discovered the whole using Alexa to read your Kindle books to you. It is not remotely as nice though as a narrator.
Right.
I flip out of it as often as I can because it's weird. Like there's parts that are fine, but there's no replacement for an actual person reading and performing an audiobook. So you're awesome, Anne.
Yeah, you totally are awesome. And you know what Anne didn't say is that she and I have a joint YouTube where she reads a lot of she reads some short stories of mine. She reads a chapter from Romancing the Kicker, I believe, and I will put that up on the chat if anybody's interested. You can check it out. It's also for free, right? So
awesome.
yeah. And Anne has also narrated a bunch of other authors as well. So if you're interested in her, you can go and grab her off ASICS. Is that how you say it, Anne?
Just off of Audible.
Audible, right?
It's
yeah.
through ACX, yeah, but just you can just find me on Audible. But just Google Anne or just search Anne Etter. It's Rachel Spangler, Karen Werlinger, and Kim Taylor Blakemore. So our authors I have narrated full features for.
Cool.
And Anne's also awesome because she connected me with her daughter who is going to beta read my movie. Because I needed like younger people to read because I'm 42. I have no idea if my 17 and 18-year-old characters will resonate with, you know, will sound like 17 and 18-year-olds if they're going to sound like a 42-year-old writing 17 and that's very important to differentiate.
It's actually my friend's daughter, but yes.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No worries.
Yeah,
she was very excited to do that.
Are you writing a feature, Jax?
Yeah, I'm in a veteran screenwriting program through the Writers Guild Foundation, and so I'm writing my movie right now. And I literally yesterday just came up with a TV pilot that I'm working on now with a friend. So I'll still keep writing books, but you can reach so many more people with movies and TV shows. So I want to be able to do both. And someday I really want to be able to adapt Lee Winter's Shattered into a movie because it would be absolutely phenomenal. And she has no interest in doing it herself. So I volunteer, no matter how painful it is to do that. I don't care. I want to see that made into a movie because it's amazing.
Super cool.
Oh, people are doing stuff in like film and TV. It's really awesome. Lola Keeley's on the path to get stuff out there as well. It's great. We're a good bunch of people, I think. Awesome. Well, I think we'll end there. That's a really good point to end. Thank you very much, Anne, Catherine, Jax, and Elle, who's gone, but thank you anyway. The last thing today is the writing clinic, and that will be at 8:30. So see you guys in a little bit.
You absolutely will.
Thanks everybody for taking that.